5 moments when saying less gives you more power. If you want to understand how authority really works, do not study the loudest person in the room. Study the quiet one. Watch who speaks only when necessary, who does not rush to explain themselves, who allows silence to sit comfortably between words. Most people believe power comes from persuasion. They believe the more you explain, the more control you gain. But the Stoics understood something different. Words reveal your internal state. When someone feels secure, they speak with precision. When someone feels uncertain, they speak with excess. Over-explaining is rarely about clarity. It is about anxiety. In everyday life, people constantly test one another without realizing it. They watch how quickly you react, how much you justify yourself, how eager you are to fill silence. And in those moments, the man who speaks the least often reveals the most strength. Today, we will examine 5 moments when saying less gives you more power. These are not tricks or manipulations. They are principles of restraint. If you recognize these patterns in your own behavior, it is an invitation to sharpen your discipline. Because the truth is simple. The more comfortable you become with silence, the more difficult it becomes for others to control you. The first moment is when someone challenges your decision. Most people feel an immediate urge to defend themselves. They explain why they chose something. They justify their reasoning. They provide details that were never asked for. In doing so, they unknowingly place their own judgment on trial. But a decision explained too quickly loses its authority. When you rush to defend a choice, you invite debate from people who were never responsible for the outcome. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly that if something is right, it does not need noise around it. It needs steadiness. A calm man states his decision and moves forward. He does not chase agreement. He understands that explaining every choice is a subtle form of seeking permission. And once people sense that need for permission, they begin to push. Saying less in that moment signals something important. It shows that your decision was not made for approval. It was made because you judged it necessary, and people instinctively recognize the difference. The second moment is when someone is trying to provoke you. In daily life, this happens more often than people admit. A sarcastic remark, a dismissive tone, a subtle insult disguised as a joke. Many people react immediately. They defend themselves, they argue, they explain why the comment was unfair. But the moment you react emotionally, the other person has already gained leverage. Because provocation feeds on reaction. The more energy you give it, the stronger it becomes. The Stoics practiced something that feels unnatural to most people today. They allowed insults to pass through them without urgency. Not because they were weak, but because they understood how attention works. What you react to grows. What you ignore weakens. When you say less in that moment, something interesting happens. The person who expected a reaction suddenly has nothing to hold on to. Silence becomes a mirror. Their behavior becomes visible to everyone else in the room. Power often reveals itself through restraint. Not every challenge deserves a response. If this way of thinking sharpens how you see human behavior, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. These videos are designed to help you understand the quiet psychological patterns that shape respect, authority, and self-mastery in everyday life. The third moment is when you are explaining your boundaries. A boundary that is heavily explained quickly becomes a negotiation. The moment you begin listing reasons for why you cannot do something, you create openings for people to argue against those reasons. You say you are busy. They ask with what? You say you are tired. They say it will only take a minute. Suddenly, the boundary you tried to set becomes a conversation. Epictetus believed that one of the first steps toward freedom was understanding what belongs to you. Your time belongs to you. Your energy belongs to you. Your tolerance belongs to you. When you enforce a boundary quietly, it carries weight. When you explain it repeatedly, it begins to weaken. Because explanations teach people where to push. Saying less in that moment is not cold, it is clear, and clarity earns far more respect than long justifications. The fourth moment is when people question your confidence. Sometimes this appears in subtle ways. Someone asks why you are so quiet. Someone pressures you to explain your thinking. Someone tries to pull you into defending your personality. Many people feel uncomfortable with silence. They assume quietness means insecurity. So they begin asking questions, hoping you will explain yourself. But when you rush to explain who you are, you accidentally frame your own identity as something that requires approval. Seneca warned that constant speech weakens the mind. Silence, when chosen deliberately, strengthens it. The calm individual does not feel the need to explain their presence. They speak when they have something meaningful to add. And when they do speak, people listen more carefully because their words are rare. Confidence does not come from constant expression. It comes from comfort with restraint. The fifth moment is when you are pursuing something important. One of the quiet mistakes many people make is announcing their ambitions too early. They explain their plans, their goals, their future moves. They talk about what they will achieve long before the work has been done. But spoken ambition invites interference. It attracts opinions, doubts, and sometimes even quiet jealousy. The Stoics preferred a different approach. They believed discipline should happen in silence, work quietly, improve quietly, move forward without broadcasting every intention, because results speak in a way explanations never can. When you say less about what you plan to do, you create space for action. And when the results finally appear, they carry far more weight than any promise ever could. Across all of these moments, a pattern begins to emerge. Most people talk too much because silence feels uncomfortable. They rush to fill it with explanations, clarifications, and defenses. But the man who learns to sit comfortably in silence develops something rare: psychological gravity. When you stop explaining everything, people start observing you more closely. When you stop reacting to every comment, people become more careful with their words. When you stop announcing every intention, people begin noticing your actions instead. Silence changes how others perceive you. Not because silence is magical, but because it removes signals of insecurity. And once those signals disappear, people begin projecting strength where calm exists. The Stoics were not obsessed with dominating others. Their real focus was self-mastery, the discipline to control impulses, the discipline to choose when to speak and when to remain still. Because the ability to speak is common. The ability to remain silent when you could speak is rare. And in a world where most people feel compelled to explain themselves constantly, the person who does not feels different. Grounded, unmoved, difficult to manipulate. That is why saying less often creates more power. Not because silence impresses people, but because restraint reveals something deeper. It shows that your sense of self does not depend on being understood by everyone around you. And when that happens, something subtle shifts in the way others respond to you. They interrupt less, they test less, they observe more. The moment you stop chasing validation through explanation is the moment your presence begins to carry weight. Because true authority has never belonged to the loudest voice in the room. It belongs to the one who speaks only when it matters.